Hey guys, Dr. Doom in the house. Uh, been some very interesting things lately, and the interesting thing is, all of these things that I'm about to talk about happened, started happening, a week, 2 weeks ago, and are still happening now. And it's interesting because the Webbot hot date of January 7th, which is on the 8th, we had the shootings and the congresswoman getting shot in the head and the federal court judge dying on the 8th, which is a 24-hour difference from the hot date. But also what has happened is this problem with the magnetic field and magnetic north lines and whatnot of the Earth are changing rapidly. Tampa Airport, which is by me, are shutting down some of their runways and reopening other ones because they have to readjust, I guess, the landing strips. I guess they're going to have to redo them, or some of them, to face the proper direction because of the true, or not necessarily true north, but magnetic north is moving on them. And there's a certain tolerance that they're allowed, and it's already moved beyond that, so now they have to actually do something and change the runways. This was just news a few days ago. So, again, we're so close to that 7th of January date, it's pretty interesting. The other second hot date being the 17th of January for the Webbot, and that specifically, I believe, is the next 87-day cycle, solar cycle, that I've done previous videos on. There's been 2 so far. Is it any shocker that the most brutal flooding of Australia has just taken place over the last few days and a week ago when it really got started, and we're getting very close to that 17th of January, and I'm not sure the exact date of the 87-day cycle because I usually put a day or two in advance of it happening to remind myself that, hey, check out the sun, check out Earth changes, and see if anything's going on. And also the Webbot guys have said, don't worry, as we get into these cycles more, this 87-day cycle, you're going to start seeing Earth changes and problems occurring before the cycle gets here. Just slightly before the cycle gets here, plus when the cycle gets here and after, it's already going to be in effect. So that's interesting because we just now have seen that take place for the first time, and this is the 3rd cycle on the 17th or so that we're talking about. So here's another interesting story that, this isn't conspiracy, this is a fact that just happened. But before I get there, the bird deaths, the fish dying, people, eyewitnesses multiple times now, it wasn't just 1 or 2 people, multiple stories now are saying, I saw the the birds flying in the sky and then just dive bombed themselves to death right into the ground. Like, oh my God, what the hell, it's absurd, it's crazy. But again, if birds follow magnetic lines, which would explain how they know how to go to precisely the same location every year, even when they're babies and grow up and whatever they fly, they just know where to go. Same with sharks, same with a lot of mammals and sea life. And I watched a show probably 2 years ago where they had a baby shark that they knew had never been to this place where all these types of sharks go every year, like spawning season or whatever. And they said, well, we're going to blindfold it and cut off some other sensor off the shark, stop it. They blindfolded it and did something else. And they set it off miles away, and that son of a gun went right to the exact same spot that it was supposed to go to. I mean, within feet of that area. They said they followed that shark as if it was following a street. Like it just knew where to go, and it followed the street in the water. But there is no street, and there was no landmarks under the water, and the thing was blinded by these people, these scientists. So that would tell you automatically they have got to be following magnetic fields or magnetic lines on the Earth. It would also explain why about a year ago or more, there was like a dozen or possibly 24 whales that beached in another country. I don't remember right now, but it was just a regular news story, nothing big. It wasn't all over the news. A couple blurbs here and there about these beached whales, and that was it. Scientists are baffled. So Dr. Doom, the smart guy, said, you know what? Let me look at some charts that I could find, and I found ones that show the magnetic lines, in, north and south poles or whatever, the lines that run through the Earth. And sure enough, they used to go around this peninsula where these things were beaching up on. So I looked at the more recent map, and it showed that these lines had changed, and some of them were going through the actual peninsula, whereas before they went around the peninsula. Now they're going through the peninsula, and guess where the damn whales beached? Exactly where this one particular line was going through the peninsula. It had changed. We're now seeing that rapid change. So it is my opinion that the birds, the fish, all these things, these deaths that are happening is because the magnetic lines are screwing them up. And for whatever reason they're dying. The birds are dive bombing themselves to death. Possible cold weather may have something to do with it also, but who knows? I'm just throwing out some things from my research here. So then I read this story today. This is very interesting. An event has happened that has the locals searching for answers. The sun has actually risen 2 days early in Greenland. It was supposed to rise today, the 13th of January, like it does every year in recorded history. This year, 2011, it rose on the 11th. In other words, when the sun tilts, the Earth tilts, which gives us our 4 seasons, of course. The sun was always tilting. They're kind of like Alaska, where they have these weird hours of daylight. Sometimes it's like almost daylight out all the time. Other times it's like dark or whatever. Their hours are way off and the sun stays out. It's just way different. Greenland's the same way. It's way up there by the North Pole. So the fact that the sun came out, in other words, early, 2 days early, should send alarm bells to everybody. And if you think for 1 second, oh, stupid 2012 believers, you guys are such bozos. You guys are dumb. Nothing's going to happen. It's already happening. 2012 is the right year. The Mayans got it right. All the ancient civilizations got it right. And here are the examples showing you something is happening. We had a massive flood mudslide last night. I think it was in Brazil. And I'm reading that this morning. I think it happened last night. How people in the middle of the night heard all this noise and half their neighborhood was washed down the waterway / mudslide, and one of the people that died was a 2-month-old baby. His whole crib just went down the river or the mudslide. No one knows where he's at. He's probably dead. It's sad to hear stuff like that, but it's just nature. I mean, honestly, look, when you see a lion on TV killing, an antelope or some other creature, you may feel a little bit bad, but after you've watched it and you realize, well, it's just nature. It's just, if they didn't eat that, there'd be no lions on the earth because they'd all die. They'd starve to death. So it's obviously an act of God, if you will, of nature doing its thing. But when we hear one of our own humans, oh, a poor 2-month-old baby got washed down, a landslide, it's heartbreaking. It really is, because you think, oh, I've got kids, and then, imagine if that was me and this and that. But anyways, that's kind of besides the point. The point is, stuff is happening. It's happening faster and faster and faster. We've got some WebBot stuff coming up. The next report is going to be due out, I think, around approximately the 25th or 27th of January, somewhere in that time frame. He's saying there's huge potential for the stock markets, or not necessarily all of them, but the markets, basically, as they call it, the markets entity is the topic of the WebBot, for failure. Problematic failure before the report even comes out. So in other words, within the next 15 days max, probably, or roughly 15 days, we ought to watch the markets. Now, I noticed silver and gold were down. Silver was down like 3% today. Not that that's a lot, because again, if it was $29 and it dropped down to 28 something, big deal, because the WebBot had already mentioned you're going to start seeing $5 a day moves. So if it's $35 today and all of a sudden it drops down to 30, that's going to be more than a few percent drop. It's people like, oh man, don't matter. Get out of paper, first of all, because if you're in paper, you're going to get cleaned out immediately when that happens. But if you got physical silver, it can sit in your safe and say, who cares? Yeah, it's down $5 today. I don't care. I'm not going to get a margin call from my broker telling me that I owe $5,000 because it went down too far and my account can't support it. So, only to tell your broker, listen, bozo, it'll be back up $5 in another day or two. Call me then. Don't work that way. Your account gets liquidated, you're done, give us the money. That's how that works. Get out of paper if you're in paper, for God's sakes. Get some physical silver. Anyways, that's kind of all this video was about, is the earth changes. Man, I'm telling you now, you better start stocking up on food. I know Costco has on their website, Costco.com, has a 1-year supply of food, freeze-dried food, I believe, a little variety package of stuff for one person for 1 year. It's around $1,000. If you've got a family of 4, let's just assume you would divide that into 4. Well, that would be 3 months out of the year. It would be nice to have a 3-month, 90-day food supply for your family, wouldn't it? For $1,000? Man, you can't beat that. The problem's going to be when just enough tiny bit of people catch on, like, I'm getting a little nervous, regardless if they study the stuff you and I do. If just the average person decides, I heard something on the news today that kind of struck me, blah, blah, blah. And whatever it is, triggers them to say, you know what, let me go online and see if I can find some food supply somewhere. And they go to Costco, online, or some other places that sell that stuff, and they start buying it. Do you know how quickly that stuff would be cleaned out? before anything even bad happened. Before any dire thing happened where we all said, oh crap, I hope I've got some food. I'm talking long before that. Just one little news story that catches them the wrong way. The rest of the sheeple out there doesn't really affect them. But just a tiny, tiny percentage it does affect. And they go out and buy these freeze-dried foods. Or whatever foods, emergency supply foods. Numerous kinds. They'll be cleaned out. And at that point, even though you've been studying this stuff and you knew ahead of time, man, that was one of the things on my list to get. Damn. Dr. Doom even told me in advance, but I was just waiting. I wanted to do some other things first, whatever the reason might be. You need to get on that. If you got your W-2 back for income taxes, whatever, and you're going to get some money back, man, don't wait. Get that stuff taken care of immediately. Get that check in your hand. If the place that does it for you offers to pay you, in 24 hours, if you give them $50 or something out of it, man, take it. Take that money and get prepared, man. I went out and bought a little grain mill and a big thing of 3 packages of grains, mainly wheat. Worst case scenario, I've got the grain seeds. Those things will last forever, practically. So in an emergency, I'll take them out and I'll use my little hand crank and create some, flour, basically, and I can make bread or whatever else I need, You can live off of bread for a while. Sure, it would suck to have to eat that constantly. But in an emergency situation, it's going to taste like, gold. It's going to be fantastic. But anyways, I wanted to share that with you. This sun thing rising 2 days early, this is huge. I mean, this is no little event, even though it appears to be just some nonsense. What does that mean, actually? Is the Earth, I know the magnetic fields in the North Pole or whatever is changing rapidly, and it's moving 40 miles a year now, I think, which is the fastest it's ever moved, towards Russia, which is interesting because I think that's exactly where Edgar Cayce, renowned psychic, medium, whatever, from the early 1900s, had said it would.